Hello everyone, and welcome to our second episode of Tenancy Matters in BC. It's Jaeden Hildebrand, and I'm here with the lovely Shirin Saleh, owner of 88 West Realty. And today we're going to be talking about policy guidelines 2A and 2B. 2A refers to when an owner ends a tenancy because they themselves are going to be moving into a property or a close family member, as well as even if a purchaser is moving into a property. 2B refers to when the owner ends a tenancy due to demolition or large-scale renovations.
Well, thank you, Jaeden, for the nice intro. And actually, before we dive into our topic today, I should mention that since we posted our first episode, I've received phone calls and emails, appreciating and acknowledging what we are doing. And also, we had a couple of questions that we tried to answer all the questions. And that's the purpose of us reviewing the policy guidelines by RTB, to make sure that everyone is aware of, especially landlords and tenants are aware of their rights and responsibilities. And if they do have any questions, just refer to us. We will be more than happy to answer your questions. Now, with that said, back to you, Jaeden.
Perfect.
Start.
So we know there are multiple ways for an owner to end a tenancy of a property. But Shirin, can you clarify the difference between an owner ending a tenancy for the landlord's use or for a purchaser's use?
Well, as you just mentioned, a landlord can serve a notice to a tenant to vacate, of course, if it is a month-to-month. If it is fixed-term tenancy, they can't touch it. They have to wait until the end of tenancy. If it is month-to-month tenancy, then the landlord can provide a notice, serve a notice to vacate the property for two reasons. A, for their own personal use, or for its landlord's family members' use, or for the purchaser. If a property is for sale and the buyer wants to move in after closing the transaction, they want to move in and live in the property, so the buyer will ask the landlord to serve a notice to the tenant. So each of them has a specific period of time that we have to follow the rules and regulations of Tenancy Act. Now, Jaeden, the question you asked me leads me to ask you a question.
Of course.
Which talks about the definition of close family members. Who is considered? Is my sister, brother also, or landlord, sister, brother considered as close family?
Sadly not. Siblings are not considered close family. The close family refers to the owner's parents, their children, or their spouse, or their spouse's parents or children. But that's it. That's where the definition ends.
Okay, so the in-laws also will be considered.
Yes.
So no aunts, uncles.
Yeah, no aunts, no uncles,
nephews.
no cousins, nothing like that.
Okay.
So when it comes to ending a tenancy when the owner wants to occupy it, the biggest factor is good faith. Can you please explain the good faith requirement when the owner is ending a tenancy for their own occupation?
Yeah, my goodness, yes. Good faith, bad faith. These are the topics that most of the time the tenants are skeptical when they receive a notice to vacate. And the tenants do have the right to ask the question or whether the notice has been served in good faith, meaning that the landlord does have the true and sincere intention to move in, or one of landlord's close family members wants to move in. So good faith meaning that the genuine intention to move in to the property, and then the landlord should prove it by living there for 12 months, minimum 12 months. In the past, it was only 6 months. Now they have to live in the property for 12 months.
Well, a full year now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, this leads to actually the conversation that we have leads to a question in my mind that I would like you to answer if possible. Now, what if the tenant is not happy with the notice? What should the tenant do? If the tenant thinks that there is no good faith, there is bad faith, and the landlord does not really want to move in, landlord is solely serving this notice because the tenant is underpaying, and then they want to bring another renter with what is the remedy for the tenant?
So the tenant can file a dispute application with the RTB within 30 days of receiving their notice from the owner. If it's a purchaser who's going to move in, they have 21 days to actually file the dispute with the RTB.
So meaning that the only remedy or the only recourse for the tenant is to file a dispute with RTB. And then they have, 30 days. And
Yeah,
21
and then
days.
after that, a hearing will be scheduled, and then they'll both present their cases.
Now, again, whose responsibility is to prove the tenant is wrong or right?
So the owner needs to prove their good faith and prove that they are going to be moving in, or prove that the purchaser is going to be actually moving in.
Oh, interesting. So a tenant is not happy or questioning the integrity of the notice. The tenant files with tenancy branch. Files a dispute with tenancy branch, and the owner, the landlord, or the purchaser has the right to or should prove them the tenant is wrong.
Well, no, they have to prove their own good faith, by proving the tenant wrong, essentially, yes.
Yes. So what is the procedure of, or what is the process of serving a notice? I know it's been changed. Now, can you walk us through?
So now it's through a web portal, through the RTB, and that's basically the finite way of doing it now.
Now, with that said, with web portal, is the tenant still entitled to receive 1 month rent compensation, or? What is the
Yes. So
situation?
if they are being forced to move, then they are entitled to 1 month's worth of rent as compensation.
Okay. Now, here's the situation. If a tenant receives a notice to vacate by the end of April, or by the end of, in 4 months, and then a tenant finds a property, say middle of April, is the tenant allowed to vacate the premises? And then is the tenant allowed to receive, or entitled to receive, the balance of the rent?
Yes, so they are allowed to move anytime up to the end of their notice. And let's say they pay their rent the beginning of one of the months and they move on the 6th. Then the owner has to return the rest of the month, they have to prorate it for the rest of the month and pay them that back.
Wow, that's good news for tenants, but then obviously not so well received by landlords. Okay.
All right, so what happens if a landlord gives a 4 months notice because they're planning on moving in, but then 2 or 3 months into it, they change their mind and then they want to rescind the notice that they gave them? How does that work?
Well, a landlord cannot or is not allowed to rescind the notice unilaterally. It has to be by mutual agreement. So the tenants should also agree with the notice. So, and then we have been in this situation a couple of times. The tenants had already made their plans. The tenant did not want to. They wanted actually to move out. They wanted to collect 1 month rent compensation and move out of the property. And there was no problem, and we couldn't resolve it. So it has to be based on mutual agreement. Unilaterally, a landlord cannot cancel the notice.
Yeah, okay, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Because then
Now, another situation that most of the time, or sometimes I would say, that we deal when we are involved in the sales of a property which is tenanted. Now, obviously, the purchaser provides a notice to the landlord to be served to the tenant to move out after 3 months, and the tenant does have the right to file a complaint or dispute with RTB within 21 days, as you mentioned. Now, this may delay the process of completion and the transaction. What would you recommend in these situations?
Well, just as you said before, mutual agreement, sitting down, talking and discussing, rather than having to go through the RTB. RTB can obviously be the worst case scenario or the last step, but just figuring it out together is going to be the best step you can do. Amazing.
So that's what we always recommend our landlords and tenants. Why don't you sit together and then discuss the problem and try to mutually and amicably resolve the problem? That's the best solution, and everybody will be happy. Create a win-win scenario. Well, everybody will be happy. Then there wouldn't be any worries from the purchaser's side. Then the transaction will be delayed. We don't want a delayed transaction because everybody has a plan in life, especially a buyer, a purchaser who is investing heavily in purchase of a property.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, it was a nice conversation talking about Policy Guideline 2A, and then which talks about the providing or serving notice to the tenant for the purpose of either landlord moving in or a purchaser moving in. Now the third one talks about the Policy Guideline 2B, talks about serving notice to vacate, to the tenant to vacate for the purpose of major renovation or converting a rental building into strata lot, which rarely happens, or converting a rental unit into a legal unit. Actually, this is something that I'm involved in. So, policy guideline 2B discusses the rights and responsibilities of both the landlords and tenants. Now, a landlord should go through a lot of steps in order to make sure that they are following all the procedures. One of them is the landlord should obtain all the permits, and then everything should be done in place. And then after that, the landlord is supposed to provide serve a notice, which takes a lot of time. Can you imagine for a landlord wants to convert or do a major renovation, and then they have to collect all the permits, hire all the trades and everything in place, then submit to RTB the plan, as well as provide a notice to the tenant to move out. Now, what kind of renovation? What is considered as major renovation? Probably you can help us with that.
What's considered major renovation is basically anything that would make the property unlivable for the tenant.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that you just can't exactly have a tenant living there when you're destroying all the walls, or you're rewiring all of the electrical, or doing even seismic upgrades to the property.
Right. Okay. So if a landlord is claiming that I'm changing the flooring, probably they can't serve a notice to vacate because they're changing the flooring. It will be inconvenient, obviously, for the tenant for a couple of days. It's not major, considered major.
Exactly.
So that's one of the reasons that a landlord should file with RTB if they want to serve a notice to vacate for a major renovation. And if you remember, we had renovation issues and problems.
Oh, that was a big problem back in the day, where an owner would just maybe remodel a kitchen and then they would kick out the tenants because they wanted to remodel it without them having to be in the way.
So basically, these policies, they are making sure that the rights of the tenants are...
It's just so the tenants are treated fairly.
Yes. Yeah. Jaeden, another question came to my mind, actually two questions. One is, what is the difference between the period of time that the landlord should give notice to for renovation to the tenant than for landlord's use? And also, what is the compensation difference? Is there any difference between these two?
So there's no time difference. It's still 4 months. That's after July 18th, 2024. Before that, it was just 3. But now it is 4 months. And as for the compensation, it's still the same, just 1 month's worth of rent.
Okay. So meaning that if a landlord is planning to do a major renovation or just demolition of the property and rebuild a new property, they have to start planning way ahead of time of providing a notice.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with getting the permits and getting everything in order before you actually send the notice.
Right. That was the last topic to discuss with the policy guideline 2B. Stay tuned for our next episode. We will discuss policy guideline number 3.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shirin. And then thank you guys for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments.